Mary, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm looking forward to our conversation. We've been able to touch offline and talk about some of the work you've done and you're doing right now and what you're passionate about. I think there's a lot of importance around what you're trying to do and help parents in how they can build healthy connections with their children. And it's something that we don't tend to learn. There's no book on how to manage these connections with our children. We tend to figure it out through trial and error. And sometimes people do carry a lot of shame and guilt around how they manage their parenting. But I'm sure we'll get into that today. But before we jump into our conversation, I do want to give you an opportunity to share with the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what's brought you here.
I'm Meri Wallace. I've been a child and family therapist for over 30 years, and I'm a parenting expert. And I write books about parenting, and I work with parents and try to teach them how to manage their children in a positive way so that
Mhm.
their children will grow up to feel loved. Do you want me to show you my latest book?
Of course.
Okay, so this is my latest book, and it's called The Secret World of Children.
Hmm.
Over the years in working with parents, I found that the hardest thing for them was to understand their children's behavior. Their 3-year-old would be kicking and biting, their teenager would be slamming doors and saying, I hate you. And when this happens, a caring parent doesn't know what to do. Is my child crazy? Have I failed? Is he going to be on a therapist's couch forever? And so I wrote this book out of my deep love for children and my wish to explain to parents why their children behave the way they do. Because I think the understanding why the behavior is happening and giving parents specific tools, what to say, what to do. Because a lot of times parents just stand there, oh my God, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I and I found that explaining to parents children's natural development, they once they understood that the behavior was related to natural development, they knew their child wasn't crazy and their child was just being a child. But
Hmm.
there are ways to handle these natural developmental issues. And if you look at my book, you'll see I came up with 9 specific issues like the need for love. Children have a natural curiosity, they have a natural need for independence. All of these 9 developmental issues are actually at the bottom of what you're seeing. And I find that when a parent comes to me pulling his or her hair out because they're so worried about their child, that once I explain these connections, the parents feel better. And I can see in their faces, they're relaxing. By the time they leave, they're smiling. They feel empowered. And that's what I wanted to do with this particular book. I wanted to sum up all the positive things I have found in working with parents over the 30 years, things that work and that are good for kids and good for parents.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate all of that, Mary. And but I do want to obviously explore a lot of these developmental areas and why. And I know you and I have chatted about how parents will tend to internalize a lot of the behaviors they see from their children and how sometimes that can be frustrating. So I do want to explore all of that. But before we go down that path, I'm curious to know your journey through all of this because I know you shared your love for children was goes beyond the work you've done in this space. There's something else from your past that allowed you to connect with children on a deeper level, and I'm curious to understand that and what that experience was like for you.
Initially, I studied dance. and I love anything with the arts. I call myself an artist, even though I'm also a clinical social worker. But I fell in love with the children I worked with. I taught them creative movement, and I worked with children of every age, and I wanted to continue to understand them developmentally. Now, the other thing is, I am quite aware of my parents' mistakes, and I see parents on the street hitting their kids and or saying mean things. And parents don't necessarily know that words can be very hurtful. So I felt that I could contribute to the world explaining children and showing teachers, parents, doctors how to work with children,
Hmm.
so that they can end up feeling loved. And I always say that one of the number one things in working with children is protecting their self esteem. And we don't always hear ourselves. And so I'm just a guide for
Hmm.
parents. I'm not here to criticize them, I'm here to support them and guide them on how to do this.
Yeah.
I would say this a lot of people are saying, "Oh, this is the parenting manual we've been waiting for." And in a way it is, because it explains all of children's behavior to you. So it is a way of guiding you on this journey.
No, and I appreciate that. I think it's a important distinction to know, especially in our field of work, that we're not really experts. Our goal really is to help guide our clients, whether it be as the work you're doing with parents or my work as a therapist working with clients directly. The goal here is to guide. We don't have all the answers, but together, in terms of collaborating and exploring, we can find some avenues that may work. And sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board and reassess whether certain things are working or not. Now, when it comes to children, and especially early on, being a dance instructor for children, majority of the times, their imaginations are running wild. They're very exploratory. They like to be adventurous. And something with dance, I think it allows them to connect with their body, which we don't teach them otherwise. Do you see a lot of benefit in the activities you were doing? Because I see this with children, especially my own son playing sports, and how that is so valuable for their development just to have these physical ways of expressing themselves.
I loved it, and I think it really benefited the children. For example, let's say one topic I would choose is the autumn leaves. And I would ask the children, "How did the leaves blow on the tree?" And each child would just sway and come up with their own way that the leaves blew. And then I said, "And then what happens to the leaves?" "Oh, they fall down." And the children would express their own way of falling down and then rolling on the ground. And it was just beautiful. It was from their imagination. They were stepping into the world and
Mhm.
experiencing the world. Even this, sometimes I would do, "Okay, let's do this, the topic of up." And kids would come up with different ways of showing up and down, and um, or I would tell them a story and then they would dance it out. Each child would dance it in their own way. And I
Yeah.
think it was good for their imagination, it was good for their bodies.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that kind of is probably a good segue into the behaviors, right? Because through that exploration, sometimes as they're experiencing the world, they are almost trying different things. And sometimes that can manifest as certain behavioral problems as parents that we may see, but they're still innocent and naive in the sense that they're still exploring and experimenting with the world around them to see what kind of response they're getting. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, too, for parents, when they see certain behaviors that they may not necessarily approve or agree with, that's where that shame kicks in. And I feel like a lot of the times it's our own shame that we're projecting onto our children. And that's where a lot of that friction can happen because we're trying to manipulate their world and asking them to behave in a way that we think is appropriate. Whereas I think it's important for them to explore that side of their childhood and understand better. But I want to get your thoughts around the behavior stuff that you were talking about and why parents tend to internalize it so much.
I'm going to go a little bit backwards and then move up to the parents. What I was saying before about these 9 developmental issues,
Hmm.
these issues start as when a baby is born. A baby is naturally curious. So if you have a planter in the room, your baby is going to want to explore it. Oh, wow, that's exciting. Oh, look at that electric cord. That's so exciting. I'm going to tug on it. But when we see it, we go, "Oh my god." It's almost as if we're looking at the child like an adult. He should know better.
Yeah.
And how am I going to get him to stop that? And the old way of doing it was punishing, or sometimes physically punishing, or verbally punishing. But what I try to tell parents is this is a normal, natural part of children. If you don't want your child to keep putting his hand in the dirt in the planter because he loves it, it's fun, it feels good, take it out of the room for a while. Wait till he grows a little bit. Don't put a glass vase on your table because, yes, he's going to keep going, even if you say no. Even if you say, no, that could break, that curiosity is
Hmm.
overwhelming. And by the way, that curiosity has been studied to be one of the best sources of children learning and succeeding at school. Curiosity is a very good thing. So we want to encourage it, but we have to really childproof our house and try to make it so that it's not an everyday issue for no reason. You don't have to have that issue. If you're sitting and feeding your new baby and your 3-year-old comes over and kicks you, it's not because he's crazy. And that's, I often have parents come into my office like, they're hysterical. We don't hit him at home. Why is he kicking? And go back to early development. A baby comes into the world, and when the baby is hungry, it's desperate. The baby has to eat, and the baby thrashes around with his arms and legs. He doesn't know how to talk. He doesn't know how to use words, so he uses his body. And in my book, I explain that all of these early issues go on all the way through adolescence. So an adolescent can also be a little bit aggressive at times. It's a natural part. Now, how you handle it is the key.
Mm.
And I can get into that.
Sure.
Um, would you like me to do that?
Yeah. Before we do, I do have one question just to clarify because you were talking about, if child proofing, and I wonder, would that be a potential downside to the child's social development or development in general because you're trying to control the environment or because you're not happy with the behavior? I'm curious about that because I think that exploration and curiosity is still good. And do you encourage that for the child?
Oh, absolutely. I'm talking about not setting up situations where you're going to end up having this battle every day over something. Sometimes people put a in part of the room and they have tons of toys and tons of things to explore. But, or in the kitchen, make sure you have safety locks on the cabinets because you don't want your child to take out something that could hurt him. This is all for safety and for keeping stuff safe. Yes, exploration is
Mm,
so important and encouraging it. Uh, Getting a little microscope for kids or a magnifying glass. Yes, definitely.
mhm.
We're just trying to keep them safe and not have stuff that's going to be a problem,
Yeah,
an
absolutely.
unnecessary problem.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I appreciate that clarification. Yeah, so I would love to get into what can parents do and how to not internalize some of that behavior from the child. So, what are some ways parents can focus on not making it about themselves and manage this?
Yes, because that is a big deal. We love our children, and more than anything, we want them to grow up okay. And it's a huge responsibility to raise a child, and you don't want to make a mistake. And of course, you remember the mistakes that your parents, and we all do. Suppose this little child, this 3-year-old, kicks you while you're feeding the baby. Now, you're going to want to set a limit. You're going to want to say, we don't hurt anyone, we don't kick. And you want to tell the child, I can see you're feeling angry. Maybe you want mommy's attention. It's hard for you because I'm so busy with the baby. Then you can say, you know what, come sit next to me. I'll read you a story while I'm feeding the baby. And you can and the goal, the end goal of everything is to develop communication with your child,
Mm,
to get to not get, but to teach your child to use words. Now they can't use them at a very young age, but you could say, when you're angry, you need to use your words.
mhm,
Now, a lot of teachers and a lot of parents will say, use your words. But the truth is, they don't know what to say. One of my specialties is giving children the words to say. Okay, you're angry. I can see you're angry. You want my attention. You tell mommy, say, I'm angry. That's not something they know how to say. They can't even identify it. You're helping them to identify the emotion. Or you could say, Mommy, I want attention too. Now, over time, the child will internalize these words
mhm.
and be able to use them. Not right away. This is something that, like most things in parenting, you have to have have a lot of patience with. But it is the way. It is the key. It is the key, and it does work.
Yeah.
Over time, it does work.
Mhm.
You can say to a child, I can see you're really curious about the remote control. I
Yeah.
can see you're really curious, but you can't have it because uh, if it falls, it can break, and then we won't be able to use it. So you put the remote control far away so it's not going to be a temptation because it's
Mm,
awesome looking to a child a remote control. So the
mhm,
idea is to identify, acknowledge the emotion. I can see you're angry. Set a limit. We don't hurt anyone in the family. We don't hurt anybody. I wouldn't want anyone to hurt you. I wouldn't want anyone to kick you. You can't kick anybody. It hurts. And then you can even say to the child, remember when your brother hit you in the arm? He punched you? That hurt. When you kicked me, it hurt too.
mm,
This is a whole learning experience
yeah.
that takes time for the child.
Mhm.
And I think in listening to this, you could see it's not your fault that the
Yeah.
child is kicking. It's a normal child's reaction. He doesn't have language. They don't have impulse control.
Right.
It's stopping a speeding train when you tell a child, "Don't run down the street." They they don't know how to stop. It's
Right.
very hard. So everything that children learn takes time. How to be independent, but to be safe. How to be show your anger, but using words. All of this takes time. And in my book, I really go step by step how you help even your teenager to control impulses, because teenagers get angry and throw fits when you out shopping and you won't buy your child the sweatshirt that they really want.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that because what I'm hearing from you is helping the children develop those communication skills and role modeling them. And just to put it into perspective, I feel like a lot of adults themselves struggle with naming their emotions. So imagine a child trying to figure that out. Like I know so many people who, as adults, try to figure out, okay, what's this emotion I'm feeling, and often we'll have to go. What I recommend to people or clients is to go look at the emotional wheel to really understand what's the underlying emotion they're experiencing so they can actually verbalize it and then communicate it to the people in their lives. Again, it is our responsibility as parents to teach that to our children as well, so then they have the language and capability of being able to speak to those emotions. Now, in what you've shared, do you feel like then, because for the parent, they're shifting the focus from not taking on that behavior as theirs to fix, but rather helping the child communicate what's going on or express themselves? Do you feel that is sufficient and helpful for the parent then to not take it personally when the child is misbehaving or quote unquote misbehaving?
Yes, I think it's very helpful to say, okay, this is a child and he is acting out his emotions
Mhm.
in the way that a child does it. And I'm here to be his mentor, to teach him how to get along with the world. Okay, so when you're angry because your mommy says no to buying you yet another toy, even though I bought you three before we on this shopping trip, and you're throwing yourself on the ground. Is not the parents' fault. This is a child who is experiencing his wishes as urgent. It's life and death, just like the little baby who has to be fed. It's life and death. It's another developmental issue that goes on all the way through adolescence. If you can't get what you want, you're going to get tantrums. Okay. Uh, it's very helpful
Mhm.
not to take it as your fault.
Mhm.
If you say no, sometimes no is appropriate. How you can say no, there are some skills. I always tell parents, nobody is born with the skills to parent.
Right.
You're doing the best you can. However, people like me talk about it and educate people on some specific skills, like I'm trying to do now, and books can give you the skills, but don't expect that you should have them. You're All parents are in the same boat.
Right.
They don't know really what to do. You do your best because nobody ever teaches you how to be a parent. You do your best and you try to go to workshops and you try to see a parenting expert or read stuff about it. And so you do the best you can. And one really helpful thing to do is that I always tell parents is step into your child's shoes. Okay.
Mm.
If you're in a situation and you're really mad because he won't clean up his toys. Instead, he's throwing them all around. And what you're mad because, oh my God, this is really hard.
Yeah.
So rather than explode or react immediately, slow down and step into your child's shoes and try to think about what you're going to say to him and what it would feel like. If you can do that, then you'll avoid saying things that really might hurt their self-esteem.
Mhm. Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. I think what you're talking about there is really having a sense of empathy towards the child. And again, these are skills that we need to practice all the time. And we also need to apply the same knowledge to our children by having empathy and trying to be able to have compassion and understand what they might be going through. It is easier for us to then relate and connect to the child. And that's something obviously that we've touched on a few times here is how do we connect with our children? And these are all the things that you're sharing. Now, I do want to shift gears a little bit because you did touch on it. So I want to give you an opportunity to perhaps expand on the developmental areas, right? So you mentioned there's nine. You did talk about one. Are you able to expand on what these developmental areas are and how they can impact the child at different stages?
Sure, I can. Okay. First one is the need for love, and it's number one. And every child is born with that need for love. And they've done studies of
Mhm.
children in orphanages who don't get attention and don't get one to one caring. It's hard for them to survive.
Right.
Children need love to survive. Some of the things we need to do is touch. Touch is really important because it's really the first sense that children develop.
Mhm.
And so holding them, hugging them, touching their head gently is very important.
Mhm.
Um, Smiling at your child and try not to be critical, but to show encouragement. Very important.
Mhm.
That's some of the things with the need to love. The next one is curiosity. Curiosity, every child is born with curiosity. We want to encourage curiosity, but we want to keep our children safe. And that's pretty much what I was talking about
Mhm.
before. Um, it's okay to walk in the street, but we're not going to walk into traffic.
Mhm.
Traffic is dangerous. I know you're curious about all those cars, but you have to hold my hand
Yeah.
because it's dangerous and is one physical expression of aggression we talked about, where children that start off expressing their anger through physical means. And as I said before, we're going to set limits, positive limits. Sometimes parents will hit a child if a child hits, and that's not really good for them. Let's take out the word really. That's not good for them
Yes.
because it communicates to a child that um, in a loving relationship, it's okay to hurt somebody, and we're telling them don't hit, but we're hitting.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and we want to teach children what their emotion is. You are angry, you are sad, you are frightened. This is really good because adults really do struggle with it. I hear them sometimes I'll say to a client, "Oh, you were angry." And she goes, "Angry? What's that? I don't know what that feels like."
You're right.
So if we start when at a young age to label it, call it what it is, and say it's okay to feel angry. That's another thing that we get involved with, that it's not okay. So the child holds the anger inside. It's better to give him the words to express the anger and not hold it inside because it hurts when it's just inside. The need for independence. That also starts right away. Feels a oneness with a parent. I cry, you feed me. I cry, you change my diaper.
Yeah.
I touch your hand, I think it's mine. Because there's a feeling of oneness and a reliance, the parent, to get you through each day.
Yeah.
But there's also a side of a child that wants to be independent, and it shows up very early. And we want to encourage independence, but we also want to keep our child safe. You
Mhm.
know, it's okay that you really want to go. My 10-year-old, you want to go and take a look at the other stores, but you can't go by yourself, and you can't just disappear. I have an independent wish, but I'm
Right.
going to deal with it in a certain way.
Mm,
The next thing is urgent wishes,
mm.
as I was trying to explain before,
Yeah.
that a child, when a baby's born, eating is urgent. And then as he grows, anything he wants becomes urgent. It's hysterical, but that's really what it is.
Right.
So your child feels urgent. So you could say to your child, um, I c- let's say you're in the supermarket and your child wants a bag of potato chips, and you say
Right.
no, and he starts screaming and screaming. One very helpful thing to do is to acknowledge his wish very quickly. That begs with of tantrum because he knows his wish has been noted.
Right.
It's been
Yeah.
noted. And then give him a reason. I can't get it now because we have to go home and it's time for dinner, or give him a plausible reason, or say, you know what, let me write that down on my phone. So the next time we go shopping, we're
Yeah.
going to get you potato chips.
Mm.
Children love that. If you have a list on your phone, well, we're going to put it there, and maybe we'll get it. Maybe we'll get it another time.
Hmm.
No, get you don't want to promise the next time,
Right.
but maybe we'll
Yeah.
get it another time.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Impulsivity is something that children are born with right away. If they are angry, they'll throw something. If they are frightened, they will start to cry. It's very impulsive. Everything's they because they do not know consequences.
Hmm.
If I jump down from this chair, I have no idea. I'm only 1.5, but I don't know that I'm going to get hurt.
Right.
So they don't understand consequences. And so that's something they need to learn. Children, this is an interesting one. Children live in the here and now. If you say, it's time to go to school, you have to get dressed, they don't get it. They don't understand a schedule. They don't understand time. They just want to play with the toy truck they picked up.
Right.
It's very exciting. I'd rather do that than get my clothes on. And parents get very frustrated because how do you move a child through the day if the child doesn't understand what it's all about? That so the whole notion of this being a process taking time is really the case here. It's a wonderful thing that children live in the moment because they'll stop and smell a beautiful flower,
Right.
and we just walk past it because we're in a rush.
Hmm.
But so they're just fascinated by everything, so they stop. But they don't understand that the school bus is coming in 10 minutes. What's 10 minutes? So we have to teach them time. Another thing is that children have a need for pleasure, and that comes up very early in children's life.
Right.
And the last one is children are naturally fearful, and have anxieties. All of these things are behind the behaviors we're seeing. A parent will say, oh my God, my child's masturbating on the couch. What do I do? Oh no, what's wrong with my child? Little babies like to touch themselves, they like to explore them. Yes, it's pleasure. And, or sometimes children do it out of anxiety. It calms them. It's self-soothing, like sucking your thumb.
Mm.
So we have to teach children this kind of behavior. It's okay, but you have to do it. This is usually done in private. You can do it in your room. You can do it in the bathroom. You don't want a child to feel guilty
Mm.
for having pleasure and wanting pleasure.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Everything you've shared, which I appreciate. A couple of the main items that come up for me based on your shares, you want to be able to set boundaries with the children because ultimately their brains don't fully develop until well into their 20s. So they're going to make certain decisions or judgments with a not a fully developed brain. So it's our role as parents to set those boundaries and guide them. But at the same time, what I'm hearing from you is they also sometimes hearing that no is tough. Like in that supermarket example you gave, it's tough to say no, especially if a child's throwing a tantrum. You're like, oh, what if other people are watching? This is so embarrassing. I'm just going to give in. But you're not really helping the child to build resilience because if they once they grow up and they go out into the real world, they're going to have to face rejection. They're going to have to say, hear no's. And if they're not given those skills early in life, they're really going to struggle to have that resilience when it matters the most.
The thing about no is, especially little children have a hard time with that word. So I always tell parents, let's try to work around it. Oh, we really can't get that right now. The word no is sets off a firecracker.
Yeah.
So you're saying no, but sometimes with little kids, especially 2-year olds, 3-year olds, instead of just saying no, say, oh, not now, another time. If you know, it sets off a huge explosion because it's hard for them to handle. Okay. And even when children are older, you say, I can see you really want that. You really want that. And, but the thing is, just by not giving it to them, you're saying no. You're saying no. And yeah, understand what I'm saying is you don't necessarily have to use the word no. When a child is older, they can handle it better. A little kid, sometimes we work around it a little bit, but
Right.
it is a no. It is a no.
You're not getting it in for the time being. Now, do you feel like, I guess some people may object to that. I could foresee that saying, well, you're not being entirely honest with your child. You're misleading them by saying it's not right now. What are your thoughts around that? If that's the argument there, that are you really misleading your child or not being completely honest?
I understand what you're saying. And I knew that as I was explaining that people could hear it that
Yeah.
way. And I'm just saying, when you have a 2-year old, like a buzzword, you try to find another way of saying it. You can say, we're not getting this.
Yeah.
I'm not getting this. I can't get this. Or I'm just giving you options here to avoid a huge difficult thing for you in the supermarket rather than say no. Now okay, it's like waving a red cape at a bull. So that's why I'm giving you other options. And if you're in the supermarket, yes, other people might stand around. So and it puts pressure on you
Yeah.
because it's okay, parent. Let's see how well you do this.
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes it's really good just to move your child away.
Hmm.
Just go away someplace and talk to him quietly because it just takes a lot of the strain off of you. If you're sitting at the table with your family at a family meal and one of your children is having a meltdown, it's good to say, let's go to the other room for a while. We're going to talk about this because if you do it with all your family there, they're going to say, no, you should hit him. You should do this. You should do that. You should do this. And you want to do it the way you feel
Right.
is comfortable.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Mary, thank you so much for everything you've shared here. I know we've covered quite a bit of ground here, but is there anything else you feel like we haven't touched on that is of importance or value to parents that they can focus on, or just good to hear that they can immediately work on with respect to building those positive connections with their children?
I think it's helpful for parents to think about their own childhood. If they're having trouble saying goodbye to their child at nursery school, it could be because maybe their parent wasn't around very much, and so it's hard for them to let go of their child. And so and this kind of communicates to the child, stay with mommy. I feel better. I feel better. So So it's very good to think about how that issue went for you. Did you have trouble saying goodbye? It helps you to let go and let your child grow.
Mhm,
Even though what maybe it wasn't done for you, but maybe now you can do it for your child.
mhm, mhm. No, I appreciate that. No, thank you again, Mary. I know you've touched on your book, but if listeners want to find your work or get a hold of you, what are some ways they can do that? Whether it's your book or just contacting you directly, what are some ways people can do that?
I have 3 books on Amazon. One was The Secret World of Children, which I told you about.
Yeah.
The other one is Birth Order Blues, and it explains children's birth order and how it affects them and how you can help each one to feel equally loved and deal with the challenges they face. And this is Keys to Parenting Your 4-year-old. So it explains how to communicate with young children. So these books are on Amazon. I have a website and it's meriwallace.com. MERIWALLACE.com. I have an email, and if you want to email me, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's marywallace at AOL.com.
No, that's great. I will put all of that in the show notes. But thank you again for sharing all your wisdom and enlightening us with a lot of insight into how we can become better parents and build better connections with our children. So thank you so much for everything today.
I appreciate your having me, and I loved talking with you.